are welcome to session 2 of Unit 3. And in this session, we'll be looking at board management. My name is Patrick Ej. Now, at the end of this session, you should be able to state where a lesson topic should be written on the board. Describe ways of dividing the board for writing, and describe the procedures for writing on the board. Now, let's look at board management. And as a teacher, one of the most important and valuable teaching learning resource that you have at your disposal in the classroom is the board, either the chalkboard or the whiteboard marker. That is one of the most important resources that you have at your disposal anytime you go to the classroom. But the problem is that most teachers misuse this resource in the classroom. And so these are some guidelines that will help you to ensure effective use of the board. So first of all, write the topic of your lesson at the top center of the board. So always the topic that you are treating must be on the top center of the board. You must also have the subject as well on the board. And the topic, once written, should remain on the board until the end of the lesson. So take note. Normally, we go to class, there are some things we will normally do. Those are like routine for us. We enter, we write the date, we write the subject. But the topic, we will continue cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. So at every point in time, to the students, it looks like they are starting something new. So once you write the topic at the top center of the board, make sure it remains there until you are done with the whole lesson. And the next guideline you need is that divide the board into two or more approximately equal parts. And this is dependent upon the length of the board. So there are some boards you can only divide into two, others you can divide into three. But take note that depending on the number of students in your class, sometimes after your division, some can even divide the board into four, but they will not write at the extreme ends. So they are going to take only the middle two. So take note of that. And when you are writing on the board, write from left to the right-hand side of the board or the opposite side. So it means you can also start from right and move to the left-hand side. Now, when you do this, it is able to help your learners to follow the order in which you have been writing on the board. Now, understand that not all students are fast writers. Some are very slow when it comes to writing. But if you divide your board and your writing is in that sequence, that the sir or madam started from left, and from here he or she moved to this in that order, the student can also follow to write everything that you as a teacher you have written on the board. And always clean the whole part of the board to be used for writing. So sometimes you realize that there are some teachers, they will be writing on the board, then they will clean the top part of a portion of the board, and the down part will be there, then they will be writing, then they will ask the students, can I clean here? It is not appropriate to be doing that. So always ensure that anytime you want to write on the board, ensure you have a clean board that you will use for your teaching. And avoid talking to the board. So whenever you are writing, try as much as possible not to be talking. That is, when you are facing the board, do not talk. And avoid obstructing students' view with your body while writing on the board. So anytime you are writing, you can position yourself in such a way that your learners can see what you are writing. Better still, when you are done writing, always make sure you stand at a position that your learners can have a full view of whatever information you wrote on the board. And you must also write boldly and neatly. Your writings on the board must be legible. The students at the far end should be able to see what exactly you have written on the board. And ensure that whatever information you put on the board is correct. So you must check for spelling, you must check your grammar, the definitions, all this information on the board. Ensure as much as possible this information must be correct. And use a pointer. So you can use a ruler, you can use a stick to indicate things on the board. Don't be using will be using their finger as a pointer to point items on the board to students. Always make sure you use either a meter rule or a stick, or you can get yourself a pointer that you can use. And underline headings, subheadings, and important words or expressions on the board. So in your definition, maybe there are some key words you want students to take note of. You can underline them. If you are using chalk, you can use a different color to highlight that particular point. And you must also box important formulas or expressions that have been derived on the board. So an example is this. So we have derived the Newton's first law of motion, one of Newton's equations of motion. So we box this so that when we even want to identify on the board, it becomes easy for you, the teacher, and the students to identify. Now let's take an example of all the things that we have said when it comes to board management. So this is my board. So on my board, on top here, which is the center, I have my subject, and at the top center, I have the topic. I also have my date as the extreme top right corner. Then, depending on the size of my board, I have divided my board into two equal parts. Now, when you check my writing pattern, you realize that I started from my left, moving to the right. So I started with definition of energy, and energy has been defined. Then the next subheading is forms of energy, which has also been neatly underlined. Then it has been stated there. Then from this side, we now move here, and the next subheading is energy transformation, which has also been neatly underlined. Then the next subheading. This is all that we have just spoken about, that you must ensure that all these things are done in the classroom. Now, when it comes to cleaning the board, it is important that as a teacher, you always use a clean board. And there are some guidelines that you must follow, or there are some guides that can help you in ensuring that you always have a clean board to use. So one, ensure that the board is clean before you start using it at the beginning of your lesson. So you may enter the class and maybe you enter, a colleague entered before you. You see, sometimes a colleague may be teaching and the learners may not finish writing before the period ends. So you will be asked to give them some time. But when you want to start your lesson, make sure the entire board is clean before you begin your lesson. And ensure that the board is clean before you leave a class after teaching. So take note. When you entered, you must ensure, so your colleague teacher ensure that the board was clean before you came in. And so when you are also leaving, make sure the board is also clean before you leave. There are instances students may still be copying the information we put on board. You can tell the class prefect that ensure that the board is clean before the next teacher comes. And always insist and check whether it was done by the class prefect or any other person in the classroom. And also avoid using your palm or fingers to clean the board. Always make use of the right tool. And the right tool to clean the board is the duster. Students, in this session, we have learned the techniques involved in using either the chalk or the white board. And so as we bring the session to an end, let us have a take home. State 3 don'ts in using the board. And how should summaries of major ideas be written on the board? I hope you enjoyed this session on board management.